Right. And just checking you can see the AITSL website. Is that correct? Okay. I'm going to go to our teacher standards and just open up the button. You can go then and have a look at this yourself. But our national architecture around quality teaching and learning, deepening learning from the language that you are using, focuses on these things. Do teachers know their students and how they learn? Do they know the content and how to teach it? Do they plan for and implement teaching and learning? We'll come and have a look at that because that's very much your PM framework that we want to have a little bit of a focus on today. And then how do we make sure that we have create and maintain safe and supportive learning environments? What does assessment look like in a PM framework? And then what does that look like in my own professional engagement? So if I was to open our professional practice 3, plan and implement effective teaching and learning, you would see that we've got quite a rich architecture there of ideas about if you were establishing your learning goals, sort of looking at what do my students need to know and be able to do. If you are planning and sequencing your lessons, what do I do as a beginning teacher, a teacher in PPG, for example? What are the sorts of things I should be doing at as a teacher that's been out 2 to 3 years? And what does leadership look like at planning and teaching at that particular level? So this is very much where your PM focus is at the moment. When you go in and have a look at this, I'm not going to do too much of a demonstration, but what you'll see for each of those focus areas, for example, establishing and challenging learning goals, there's provision of some videos, some ways to look at this to get shared understanding of what we mean by planning learning goals. What does this look like in a kindergarten? What does this look like in primary, secondary, in an inclusive classroom, special education classroom, in an English classroom, a mathematics classroom? So the way we've approached it is to build a shared language and knowledge about quality teaching and learning across Australia, from which the provinces can focus. So I just wanted to point to that so you can come back in and have a look at that again at another time. So coming back to my PowerPoint and the slides that you're looking at, I'm just going to share my screen again. And I'm hoping you can see the PowerPoint. Yes?
Not yet.
Thanks, Selena.
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So that's just giving you a little bit of an architecture of the PowerPoint for you. Sorry, the AITSL standards for you. Each province has then taken those national professional competencies, which you have and are in Article 15, and articulated them into a teaching and learning and assessment framework that works for that province. So you can see it has the same questions. What do I want my students to learn? This is the New South Wales Quality Teaching Framework. How will my students get there? That's the planning component. How will I know when my students have got there, and where do I go now? But you can see within the framework that there is monitoring and analysis in between each step. So when I'm thinking about what do I need my students to know and be able to learn, I've then have some monitoring and an assessment processes I work through, and I plan and program for what the students need to know and be able to do with the data that tells me what the students are working on. So that becomes part of our framework. From a PM perspective, using your particular framework now, this looks like this area. So we still have, we've referenced the national curriculum here. We've looked at our school grade and scope and sequence. This is what teachers would be doing in Australia. We'd be looking at the repertoire of teaching strategies I'm going to need to be thinking about in my planning of the learning lesson. And as I planned that lesson and taught it, I'm starting to make quality teacher judgment of what the students now know and don't know, so I know what I need to plan next. So I've done some class and school assessments as a result of that activity. I may have had to reference national assessments, and then I'm revisiting that grade scope and sequence again. So it's that wonderful cycle of continuing planning for student success. That's how we have done that in New South Wales. And what I have, when you get the PowerPoints, which of course you will, you'll see some other planning models there for you to reference as well. When we visited one of the schools, the team that came to Sydney was able to visit Auburn North Public School. And they could see not only was that school looking at the national framework, the AITSL professional standards, and using the state framework, which I just shared with you, but then they had broken that down into an instructional model for the school. And Jumana is going to model that beautifully from her context. So in this school, they have an instructional model, which every teacher must use to introduce the lesson, hook the kids in to what the learning's about, connect it to what they were learning yesterday, and starting to develop those success criteria with the children that they hope they can show their teacher that they know what they've learnt. There's some time where the teacher is quite explicit and she might model the lesson, she or he, and then the students go through guided practice and some independent practice together. And then there's always that review and reflection at the end of the lesson. So that's how one of our schools have built that out together. In that school, though, there is 10 practices that the schools continually visit in their professional learning design. So there are their practices they visit, and these are their enabling conditions. So they're making sure all the time that they've got that strong growth mindset across the school. Professional learning being a feature of every staff meeting. Proactive leadership, getting into classrooms and making sure the teachers have understood the models that they should be working on, and the learning routines that the children are helping with. Our second group went to South Australia and met with Martin Westwell, the Chief Executive over there. And you may have heard about South Australia because Michael Fullan holds it up as a quality teaching system that models quality teaching, learning and assessment practices successfully. So this is their current learning design, their strategy. They're building this at the moment. They're revisiting what is the priorities for their learning. And just to quickly unpack that for you, to go to the next slide, you can see they've got some guiding principles that they're focused on. But this is the areas of impact they're looking at. What does effective learning look like in every classroom? And you can see curiosity and creativity, making meaning, metacognition and self-regulation and strategic awareness are part of the focus of that ministry for quality teaching, learning and assessment. They're also talking about student voice and learner agency, the well-being of every student, and equity and excellence. So their teaching learning model sits within a bigger picture of the whole child. And so at the moment, when we were there, and it's gone a little bit further since we were there, but what Martin spoke to the group that was visiting, talked about, we are figuring out the best ways to measure that this is working and that students are actually achieving well with the learning intentions we had as a system. So they're actually taking some time to make sure their areas of impact, particularly effective learners at the moment, that they're using the right measurement tools within schools, within classrooms, and across the system to make sure teachers have got all the support that they need, and the ministry is developing resources that will help the schools and the teachers deliver on quality teaching, learning, and assessment in their classrooms. This sits within the National NAP framework, the same for New South Wales that I just shared with you. So the South Australians framework sits within the national teaching standards, the national leadership standards, our approach to professional learning, our approach to monitoring and support that your supervisors would do in the districts, and the regulations, the professional standards regulations, as well as our national curriculum. So all of this has to tie together. And so we had rich conversations about what that might look like. This is just a lens into the South Australian Quality Teaching and Learning Framework at the moment, but it's in the middle of changing right now. So we will continue to share with you as the new model emerges. But you can see that it's got that same focus around learning for effective teaching, creating safe areas for rigorous learning, developing expert learners, and personalised and connect learning, so that each student is tuning into the learning at the right level for them. And of course, South Australia has always used those questions that I've presented you with at the beginning. When you get this slide deck, you'll see there's a video link there for you, and you can see this practiced as a support of a leader with a teacher in the classroom. We went to Mount Barker South School in South Australia, just up in the Adelaide Hills, and many of the people on the tour were so excited to be able to see this school in action. It was deepening learning, quality teaching and learning in every classroom that we were sitting in. This is part of their personalisation of their framework. They sit within they use Solo, which you have seen mentioned in your modules, your 7 modules. And these are the focus areas that this principal and the leadership team are making sure their teachers are skilled at in every classroom. And so the professional learning in the meetings every single week focuses on one of those. A grade might be continuing with a different focus. But you can see the week we were there, they were looking at learner dispositions and Solo. So we saw that in action. We also saw this sitting in every classroom, and Lynn is going to talk more about what this looked like, surface to deep to transfer of learning. But all of the teachers knew this. The children knew this as well. This was their shared language of learning. And this is what we know that you're starting to look like in your framework. Although this is probably not clear on your screen, we saw in every single classroom what Solo looked like in their classrooms, and the children had co-constructed that together with their teachers. So they had a shared understanding of the learning framework they were using. And in every classroom, and I know Lynn will talk about this, they were focusing on, at the moment, the learning pit. And what that looked like in terms of surface to deep to transfer of learning. So they were able to see a lot of modelling of what quality teaching and learning look like in different classrooms, from first year of school through to year 6. And we saw that, of course, in the high schools as well. So you can see the children had co-constructed their learning pit. They know that learning is not always going to be easy, that there'll be challenges in their learning, and that's the fun of learning. So this was an important part of the work. So coming back to what this looks like in an architecture. At the moment, you have a PM model sitting in the front centre of your framework, but we are talking with the ministry in lots of rich meetings and with the leaders who are leading this process. I can see Ibulu Sawasi is online here at the moment. Is what does this look like now as a national architecture? How do we make sure your new national competencies for teachers and school leaders reflect the intentions of PM? What will that look like in curriculum? What will that look like in every aspect of your learning design? I'm not going to talk too much about this, but just to acknowledge that within Australia, there is rich research of which Ibu Lin is a leader of and has been a part of this research for about 4 years, I think, Lin. So 5 years, yes. So I just want to emphasize that all of our journey in Australia just didn't happen overnight. That yes, Michael Fullan had the 6 C's, but there has been critical questions about what does student learning look like? And when we're looking for student success, what are we actually measuring? Lynn will have a much sharper explanation of that. So just to hold on the 6 C's is all as I say, and think about more deeply. And I know the National Architecture Group are thinking about that. This takes a lot of discussion and in school. And Jemana will also talk about this. In terms of, you've seen now the national architecture. Do I keep going, Yuli?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I introduced you to Eitzel, and I've put a lot more links there for you so you can see how we've guided at a national level our current discussions around quality teaching and learning and assessment and what that should live and look like in every classroom. It is tied to our national professional standards for teaching, and I know yours have just been released again, and what that might look like in practice is being unpacked. It's also in our curriculum. So you'll see quality design in our curriculum links. And so therefore you see I have a design there that helps the teachers to reflect on their teaching and learning using the curriculum alignment that they need to be working on as well. And I know Jemana's got some examples of that as well. That has taken us close to 10 to 15 years to be able to share a reasonably finished product. But we're also in that time and space in Australia at the moment that we're reflecting again on our teaching standards, as have you. So our language in our countries, our country does start at a national level. It is shared within provinces and as professional communities within provinces. But in the end, we're all got a focus that's driven by our national ministry, our provinces, and then the schools take that and put that in context. And we know that the learning design in Aceh will look different to Jakarta, that will look different to Papua because of the students and the context that they're in. So that is a careful part of our decisions at the moment. But we all have this same shared aim that we're looking for to provide quality teaching for our students and to put the oxygen on our teachers first as we start on this new learning journey. And that's what we needed to do first. We had to build a lot of the examples together first before we could start to run and share. So Ibu Yuli, I will stop my share now, and we've sort of got a little bit of an international design. And now Lynn is going to talk much more deeply about deeper learning and her journey in her state and across the country with this. Thank you, Ibu Lynn.
Yes, thank you, Jenny. So Lydia, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Louise, for your valuable presentation about the introduction of deep learning framework and implementation in Australia. So next agenda, we are going to the main session of this seminar. Let us invite our second speaker, Mrs. Lynn Davey. But before, allow me to read the CV of Mrs. Davey. So Mrs. Lynn Davey is an experienced educator and leader who has worked across schools, universities, and government to support innovation and educational reform. She has served as a Director of Learning and Teaching in the Victorian Department of Education and Training, and as the new pedagogies for deep learning cluster lead. So now partnership lead with the new Matrix Research Partnership at the University of Melbourne. She helped educators teach, assess, and credential key students' competencies. So Mrs. Devi is widely recognized for her expertise in curriculum, assessment, and driving meaningful school improvement. To Mrs. Devi, please welcome.
Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here. And as Jenny said, it is a privilege for us to work with you and learn with you today. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, Lynn.
Yes.
I just wondered if in the actions, if you could record either a heart or a thumbs up in actions, whether or not you have been involved in either leading or hearing about the learning modules around PM and are familiar with this model.
Silakan Bapak Ibu kasih reaksi di Zoom yang ikut yang paham PM atau yang tahu PM lah ya, modul dan sebagainya. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuli. Just as people are doing that, we talked to the people coming from Indonesia to both Sydney and South Australia about the importance of the why of deepening learning. And it's because the world is becoming increasingly more complex and connected. To thrive, our young people need to be equipped with skills and competencies so that they are empowered, can discriminate, they're curious, they can solve problems creatively, they can communicate and collaborate effectively within and across teams. There's been research done around the core skills that are seen that people will need to participate in life and work. And they include cognitive skills, physical abilities, engagement skills, self-efficacy, ethics, technology skills, management skills, and importantly, skills of working with others. So education departments right around the world are asking whether their current national curriculum covers all of those things and will prepare young people to thrive. Educators around the world are also developing further understandings of how they can transform pedagogies, what teaching strategies are essential, and how they can adapt learning conditions that facilitate and foster deeper learning. At the same time, students increasingly want to take action and make positive impact and grasp opportunities that will optimize their chances for success in work and life. And this is some research that came out in 2022 around what young people care about. They care about ending racism, reducing climate change, social equity, alleviating poverty, resource scarcity, about gender equality and equality in general, reducing food wastage, world economy, and the share market. So it's important that we engage our young people in authentic problem solving around things that they care about as we're designing our learning. With the work that I did with schools, we found that focusing on competencies immunises and protects against social and emotional difficulties. It levelled the playing ground for young people, building positive mental health and resilience for young people from all backgrounds, including challenging backgrounds. And the research over several years by Dr. Jean Clinton, who analysed schools working on the deep learning agenda, was that deep learning brings together excellence and equity if it's designed well. We want learners who can thrive in turbulent, complex times, apply thinking to new situations, and change the world. And if that's going to happen, we must reimagine learning. In the chat, it's time for you to stop listening and have some thinking time. In the chat, can you write one word to answer the question, what makes learning great? And Yuli, you might want to translate.
Ya. Ya, silakan Bapak Ibu masukkan ke chatnya apa yang menurut Bapak Ibu saya tuliskan satu kata apa yang menurut Bapak Ibu pembelajaran itu menjadi bagus, excellence gitu ya. Silahkan tuliskan yang faktor apa atau apa yang menurut satu kata. So that's Lynn experience. Ya. Silakan di chat Bapak Ibu.
Lots of great words coming through. Keep them coming.
Ya, satu kata ya.
Some of the words are very similar to some research that a UK educator, Professor Stephen Heppel, he asked 1,000 people what makes learning great. And the words they said were, the key words were eccentricity, making something, having an audience, delight, passion, collaboration, progress, and esteem. Yuli, I don't know whether you want to translate those words so people can see if they're similar.
I think they're similar, Lynn.
Yeah, it's similar.
Similar?
Yes.
So educators all around the world think very similarly because they care about young people and want them to thrive. What exactly is deeper learning is complex. It's not just something you can stand up and teach. It's about new strategies, about new assessment measures, and it's about combining competencies and curriculum content. In a minute, I'm going to show you a video, and you've got a task to do to contribute. After watching the video, consider these questions. Which graduate profile attributes did you see? Did you see citizenship, creativity, independence, communication, health, collaboration, critical thinking, or faith and devotion to God Almighty? Are any of those attributes from your graduate profile in the PM model evident? And you might like to put the ones you see in the chat as we go.
Diberi kemudahan dalam menjalankan tugas dan
And we'll have a discussion about what are the key messages about deepening learning. Here comes the video.
It was a warm spring morning down at Main Street Schoolyard. Excitement was in the air. Hey, check this out, said Charlie. The school's Golden Places contest has been announced. Come on, let's go get our kits. And so the kits were handed out. Everyone identical, everyone with a set of precise instructions. Each student set off to work. Charlie knew how to follow directions, made great progress, and was quite proud of it. Meanwhile, Maya was taking her time. She watched the world around her, noticing other ways things go places. The next morning, Charlie was finished and carefully inspected his work. But a noise interrupted his thoughts. Wow, said Charlie. What is that? You didn't follow the directions, did you? I started to, said Maya, but I wanted to try something different. Maya, what does that have to do with a go-kart? Asked Charlie. Who said it has to be a go-kart? Suddenly my project doesn't look very exciting. Oh, but you're a great builder, said Maya. Hey, maybe we should work together. And so they did. First, they compared notes. Charlie was good at details. Maya, good at dreaming up ideas. Each had a different approach to getting things done. Then they got to work. Side by side, they helped one another to build something new, something inspired, something spectacular. The next morning, everyone gathered for the final challenge, the big race. Each student stood alongside his or her finished project, each cart a perfect replica. Well, almost perfect. Ready? Asked Charlie. Ready as I'll ever be, said Maya. Some of the other students weren't so convinced. Ha! You may think you're going places, but you're just going to lose. Students, start on your mark. Get set. Charlie shouted, Maya, they're all ahead of us. What are we waiting for? No worries, said Maya. Flaps down, throttle up. Whoa, did you see that? And we have our winners. Charlie and Maya were ecstatic. We did it. We finished, said Charlie. Finished? I don't think so. We've only just begun. Right. Flaps down, throttle up. And off they went. They really were going places. They were going above and beyond.
I can see some words that have come through around it. Does anyone else want to add any other words that you saw demonstrated that would relate to the attributes in the graduate profile? I've seen creativity, critical thinking, independence, and I think I also saw both collaboration with those two young people working together and communication.
Yes.
Just have a think. What do you think the key messages were about deepening learning? And is anyone feeling brave enough to share, to take the microphone?
Ya,
Silakan
silakan Widya.
Bapak Ibu. Iya.
Okay, may I try?
Please.
Yeah, I can see that at first they know the goal. What are the goals for their task? And then after that, they have their own ideas. And then at the end, they collaborate together to create something different, something meaningful. I think that's the point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? There was also something about what the teacher planned. Lots of the other children just did straight out of the box. And they didn't show the creativity and the initiative of the two young people featured in the film. So those young people knew they could take a risk and that they could try new things. Jenny talked earlier today about surface to deep to transfer, and what our teachers had to learn as they were designing, that it's about the appropriate proportions of surface and deep in any series of lessons and about knowing when to move from learning more ideas to giving young people an opportunity to relate and extend those ideas so they could get transfer. In Victoria, we did a lot of work with John Hattie, Professor John Hattie, and he talked to us about the importance of surface learning, where young people knowing that, that's about the skill and the concept development. And then moving in the learning design to deeper learning, where people know how, making connections, looking at relationships and schema so that skills and concepts can be organized. And then transferring the learning, knowing with, self-regulation to continue learning skills and content and applying knowledge to new situations. So you can't go deep if you just stick to surface learning. You have to design carefully so people have other opportunities to expand. And what we know is that when students are challenged to move from surface knowledge to deeper levels of understanding, they are both more engaged and committed to extend and apply their learning. And if you think back to the words you put in the chat about fun, engagement, excitement, that happens when young people have opportunities to deepen their learning. But we can't forget that there are national curriculum frameworks which provide the vehicle to give young people the opportunity to display the competencies or the graduate profile features. And the message is clear. The focus of bringing all up to high levels of basic education has to be maintained. But in addition, there needs to be a new focus on going further of securing student engagement and on developing deep learning competencies, not just for high achievers, but for all. And your deep learning competencies are evidenced in your graduate profile in the PM model. To do this, though, the teacher's role changes. And there's three ways that teachers can think about their role to engage and propel for deeper learning for young people. One is that they are activators. They establish challenging learning goals and success criteria for young people. They access a range of teaching strategies, pedagogical practices that meet the varying needs and contexts of their young people. They provide effective feedback to activate higher levels of learning. They're also culture builders, establishing norms and trust of risk-taking. Just like those people that made the flying billy cart, they took risks and they felt that they had the trust of the teacher to follow their own path towards innovation and creativity. Culture builders engage student voice as co-designers in the learning and assessment. They cultivate learning environments that support perseverance, self-control, and belonging. And they are collaborators who connect students, families, and community. They engage in collaborative inquiry and professional learning with colleagues, and they build and share knowledge of deep learning. Through today, what we want you to think about is how can Indonesian teachers be supported to embrace being an activator, a culture builder, and a collaborator to enable deep learning. People know architects, and teachers are also architects. They are architects of learning. And what we learnt through the work with schools was that teachers need to see themselves as architects to design learning. It wasn't just about delivering the curriculum content. It was wrapping around many more things. And lots of teachers around the world are deepening learning. Some of them are using Michael Fullan's framework and tools. And so over 10 years, the work has been developed across 18 countries, but not across whole countries, just in pockets. But people, through that work, have explored the pillars of pedagogical practices, learning environments, leveraging digital, and learning partnerships. and how they can be used to design learning programs. And they provide opportunities for students to develop in all curriculum areas and including the competencies within that, so that learning is deep. Sorry, I've just lost my slides.
We can see practitioner-led learning design.
Okay, I've lost them though.
Okay.
I've got them back now.
Mhm.
In terms of the designing the learning and the teachers being learning architects within deep learning schools, they had to take into account the curriculum frameworks, the learning framework, which is the pedagogical practices, learning partnerships, learning environments, and leveraging digital. They had to think about the competencies, and they also had to think about their role as activators and culture builders and collaborators. What you're going to hear from now is one of the architects of learning design. And Jemima is going to talk you through experiences and activities that her teachers have been involved in. So I would like to now pass over to hear about a wonderful school that has been doing deep learning for many, many years. So Lydia, are you going to do the introductions?
All right. Thank you. So we're going to, have you done, Mrs.
Yes.
Davy? Okay. So thank you, Mrs. Davy, for your presentation we hear about the teacher role in many things. So next, let us invite our third speaker, Mrs. Jomana Denawi, to talk about the implementation of deep learning in Australia. But before, allow me to read the CV of Mrs. Denawi. So Mrs. Jomana Denawi is the Director of Education at Al Nuri Muslim School, over 20 years in education, overseeing compliance, curriculum operation, and performance. She brings strong expertise in project management, system design, instructional leadership, and quality assurance. For the past 6 years, she has led the designing for deep learning core team focusing on sustainable systems, practical teaching tools, teacher capability building, and real-world learning that strengthens the students' global competencies. So to Mrs. Denawi, please welcome.
Selamat pagi. Thank you very much for the lovely welcome. It's a pleasure to be here today, and a warm welcome to all the respected educators from Indonesia. I'll start by sharing my screen. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I've been the team lead for Designing for Deep Learning. We are a DDL school. We started about 6 years ago, and it's been quite an exciting and very beneficial journey for the school and our students, and the impact has been amazing. It's been very, very impactful in terms of academic outcomes, in terms of the culture of the school and the culture of the teaching profession and our teachers at the school. So I just got to see my slide.
Yeah.
Am I on the next? Am
you
I on the
want to-
next?
Okay. Jumana, do you want
Yeah.
to do screen share? Because for us it's still not yet.
That's it.
Yeah.
It says I'm sharing my screen. Should I do it
Yeah.
again?
So
Yeah,
I'll stop the
we can-
share.
we can see your slides. Yeah.
We already
can
can see your screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but only not the full screens. Because I think because you used two screens. But it's okay. Just share it again.
Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes,
Can you
we
do the slideshow on the right? The slideshow,
Yeah, so that we can see the full.
the full screen. The
Yeah, that's what I've
slideshow.
been doing. Yeah, the slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Give me a sec. I'm going to stop for one more second. I'm going to do slideshow from the beginning. And now it's not going to really let me share my screen. Wait. Are you able to see it now?
Yes, we can.
At that one.
That's
Thank you.
excellent. All right. Thank you very much. So again, like I said, I was the deep learning team core lead at Al Nuri Muslim School. Al Nuri is an independent school in New South Wales. We have over 2,400 students from kindergarten to year 12, and our staff are about 180 staff members from kindergarten teachers all the way to year 12. There's a big focus on academics. We're a top performing school in the HSC, so it's very, very important that we also maintain that as a school. That's one of the school's vision. What I'm going to do today is take you through. So like Lynn, I've lost my slides again. I can't seem to, oh, there it is. Okay, now I got it. So basically, what is very important at Al Nuri Muslim School is that we want learning to matter. We want learning in the classroom to be transferable to skills outside of the school and extended to co-curricular activities, and also be lifelong learning that sticks and can be transferred even to their university degrees. So what we want is we want our students to think deeply, act ethically, and apply what they know, not just at school, but also outside of school when they leave school. So Lynn gave an overview of the deep learning competencies, and I'm going to give you what it looks like in a practical sense at the grassroots levels where, you know, teachers in the classroom, what they had to do. It was like when we first started with deep learning, which is Pembelajaran Mendalam, it was a bit overwhelming for a classroom teacher. There was so much information. You know, as Lynn explained, there was the different tools from the learning design planning templates and the collaborative inquiry cycle, and there was also the dimensions for the every competency. What we, just to give you, if you're implementing this in your school, what we realized as the core team leaders is that deep learning is not extra work, it's just better work. So we had to change our mindsets with how we look at how we're going to implement deep learning at the school. Like I said, when you have a lot of staff members and everyone has a different opinion, there was a lot of work we had to do to make sure that we were all on the same page first. And I'll show you some of the tools that were created that actually helped us achieve this goal. So I'm not going to go again through the deep learning competencies. Lynn did a great job with that. So there's character, citizenship, collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. And obviously more information can be shared about each one and what that looks like in terms of the dimension, but I'll give you examples of how we applied some of these competencies into our teaching and learning. One of the biggest thing with the changed mindset for teachers is we had to make sure that our normal teaching and learning programs and our learning design process, that was the biggest transformation. We had to obviously now look at the tools within the Michael Fullan or the Designing for Deep Learning framework, and as Lynn explained, we had to consider the pedagogical practices, the learning partnerships, the leveraging digital, and the learning environment. And we had to do a full workshop with professional learning with the teachers to say to them, you know, when we're looking at pedagogical practices is how we're going to teach this content, you know, learning partnerships, where and why learning happens. Does learning only happen inside the classroom, or can we actually look at vertical partnerships? Can students teach, you know, older students teach younger kids? Can we get, you know, partnerships from outside of the school that can come in, expertise to come and, you know, do some of the, you know, lessons with the students to show them what they need, how the content is applied. The learning environment is who we learn with, where we learn, and the technology is leveraging digital technologies is how technologies amplifies the learning. So what we tasked every teacher when they were actually starting to redesign their units of work and their learning is they were only supposed to choose one competency, one dimension, and they had to unpack it obviously with the students. And I'll give you examples very soon. One of the biggest lessons, if you're implementing this in a school, is to go slow, to go fast, and don't overthink it, and do not do too much all at once, because it does become very overwhelming for the teachers. We did that in the first year, and then the second year we had to kind of take 10 steps back and start again. So one of the biggest thing in our first or in our second year, what we started to do is talk to the teachers about having a split screen approach. And what that means is we teach, obviously we're a NESA accredited school, so we teach the outcomes and the content, but then on the same slide, and I'll show you how we use the learning design planning template to redesign our own templates for curriculum, for the programming and the unit design. We have the competencies and one dimension on the side. So we teach curriculum content and the competencies side by side. The competencies are how students think, work, and interact. They're not anything extra, and it helps our students access the curriculum content deeper, because what happens is we're not just teaching the content, we're also teaching them different skills and different the different behaviors that we want to see for them to develop their skills in that particular competency. So this is an example of how we used the learning design planning template from the DDL tools that were shared with us. So what we did is, this is our normal lesson programming template. And if you look at the red box, you have a split screen. So this is on all our teaching and learning programs. You have the syllabus outcomes, which are mandated obviously by NESA. We teach NESA curriculum. And then on the other side, linked to that unit of work, we have a deep learning competency. In this particular example, it's a maths lesson, and they're looking at representing using structures of multiplicative relations. And so basically the dimension that the teacher in this particular unit or of work is, they're looking at critical thinking. So I'll show you what we did to actually create the deep learning goals for critical thinking as a class. It's co-constructed with the students and the teachers, and every class decides on their own competency goals for that unit of work after it's been co-constructed with the teachers. We have lesson intentions, success criteria. So this is all part of the pedagogical practices that we've embedded. And if you look here, we've got design. If on the second pages, we have implement and review, of course. So we've actually embedded the learning design planning template into our current programming template, just as little hints and little reminders for the teachers, so that when they're planning units of work and they're designing together as a group, they can actually have those questions or those thoughts at the forefront, so that they are designing learning not just to deliver content, but also to deliver deep learning curriculum that engages the kids, the students, connects them with the real world experiences, and obviously develops their competency and their skill set. And this is just a few examples. So for example, this is the split screen approach. This particular unit of work, the teacher decided it's an English unit. It's shared reading of Roald Dahl. I think it's a year 3 class, yes. And what the teacher does, and I'm going to take you through some of the tools on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, sorry, that's the Y chart. That's one of the tools that the school uses to actually unpack a particular dimension within a competency. They do it collectively as a class. The teacher and the students co-construct their learning, their learning goals for that particular unit of work. And so then the teacher as they're going through and they're delivering that unit of work, those class goals that are linked to that particular competency is on display for the whole delivery of that unit. And what we found is that, so that's just one example, and I'll give you a few more examples, and I'll show you some of the tools that we use as teachers. This is a year 4 science unit of work on built environments. Again, they picked collaboration. They also set their class goals, what it looked like. So these are some feedback, and then a lot of the reflection activities that they part of the templates that we use in the scaffold is that there's always a reflection activity that's based on the dimension. And for example, these particular students, they reflect that we all combined all our ideas and we each got a different role. In terms of what Jenny was talking about, knowing the students and how they learn, that's one of our teaching standards. And what we've noticed with a lot of our students, and we know them, they're very competitive. Sharing isn't something that they want to do, and they all want to have their idea, be the one that's taken first. Or in some cases, what we found that you've always got the reserve student who sits back and doesn't actually participate. So with the collaboration goals, one of the biggest achievements that we've found is we've had a reduction in the number of complaints from students that I didn't get a turn, they didn't listen to me. And so it's been really positive in terms of the classroom culture that has improved as a result. This is a Year 6 HISI unit of work on China. And again, if you look at the split screen approach, this is one of the students' workbooks. So they're obviously looking at Southeast Asia, and they've got 5 tasks there. They're looking at Atlas of a region, the culture, the map. On the other side, they've got their collaboration goals for that unit of work. And so I'll show you very soon how the teachers co-construct this, the split screen approach and the class goals. So that will be one of the focuses that the students will start with and then will reflect on at the end of the unit of work in terms of not just the outcome or the deep knowledge or the content that they've achieved, but also a personal self-reflection as to how far they've actually progressed on the progression. So now I'll just cover some of the tools that we use as teachers. One of the things as a team leader, what we found was at the start, there was so many tools, it was a bit overwhelming. So we've decided to put them all into one big toolbox. And we found that if we just left it to chance and it wasn't intentional and we didn't put systems in place and structures at the school, so that when the teachers came down to sat down as a group to collaborate and actually design a good unit of work that has deep learning and connects to real world problems, we found that it was a bit random. So what I'm going to show you is some of the strategies that we used with our teachers to kind of help them make designing consistent. So it didn't matter whether you are a new teacher to teaching or a very experienced teacher and has been teaching for 15 years. These tools are used across every planning sessions and in the classrooms. One of I guess the game changers has been the deep learning framework placemat, which actually puts everything in front of you on one page. And then I'll give you some examples of where we've used this, and where the teacher then has to shift the mindset from, okay, I'm delivering just content, to how do I deliver this content to make it more fun for the students, to leverage, say, digital, so that digital actually improves their access to this information, not just that they're using a computer or some app or something. The pedagogical practices, the learning environments was a big game changer for us too, because it was very, the school originally had very, as Lynn showed you, the teachers they were the instructors in the classroom, the students were the customers, and it was very teacher-led student. It was very, teacher-led. It wasn't much student agency and voice in a lot of our teaching and learning programs. And so just having teachers think about the learning partnerships and the learning environments and making a few adjustments has made a huge impact on the outcomes of students and the joy of learning for the teachers and the students. So another thing that we also use, and I'll show you an example of that, especially with some group tasks, is the GRASP tasks. And basically what that is, that's one of the scaffolds that we use from AIS New South Wales. And basically the team, it's usually like for collaboration, they can focus on what the goal is, the role is, the audience, the situation, the performance, and the standards. I'll give you some examples of where we've used these 2 particular tools. So with deep learning, what we've done is we've used tools that were obviously shared with us by experts in the field like Michael Fullan, in DDL, and we've also created some of our own tools now as a result, and that's been like a really great change in the school culture. The teachers are very excited about creating different tools for themselves that work with our students. As I said before, this whole learning design planning template, we took the template and we embedded it into our current programming template, and teachers now have this as like in every key learning area, they always have those questions. They don't have to, we haven't made it compulsory. What we've said to teachers is if a particular competency fits really well in with that unit of work, then we want you to make sure that this you consider those factors. One of the things that we found really important for our teachers is to have different models or different designs, different ways of thinking, so that they can actually design well. Sometimes when you have a lot of different templates and frameworks and that, it does become overwhelming for just a classroom teacher who's only been teaching 2-3 years. So this is another design planning tool that we was shared with us by AIS New South Wales. And what it is, it gives the imagery of a bridge. So basically the bridge are the two pillars. You've got the two pillars on the side, and everything in between is what gets you from the desired outcomes and the competency to the students obviously performing the task, you know, learning what they needed to learn, and obviously producing what they want, the product that needed to happen at the end is actually produced. So I'll just take my time and I'll explain this one. It's an 8-step process. We do this like every time when we have a, you know, like at the moment there's a new curriculum in New South Wales, and we have a lot of teachers programming for the new curriculum. So this is the first thing that we put down when they're programming a unit of work. We use this analogy that we've got the two pillars. What are the course outcomes and the competency that we want to achieve for this unit of work? And what is the student supposed to produce at the end? And then, of course, so we'll go through the steps. So the first step is you've got to know your students' interest and strength. So, you know, how ready are they for that particular content, the cultural context, what their interests are, what their strengths are. So depending on the class, we have high ability classes, we have mixed ability classes, and we have classes that obviously need some extra learning support. And so that's one of the first thing that the teachers, that's one of the biggest changes we did, because originally, like before we started deep learning, it was one program that was delivered to the 6 classes, or one unit of work, and it was delivered at the delivered all at once, obviously for the 6 classes, but also it was up to the teacher to differentiate and then redesign. So we kind of flipped it back and said, let's start, instead of just giving all the teachers one program that's like kind of the foundation for all programs, and then the teacher, it's up to every individual teacher to modify and make adjustments, etc. We flipped that and we said, let's start with the students in mind, what their interests are, what their strengths are, and let's design units of work that meet their learning needs and make sure that they can access all the content at every level. Then the next step of the design is obviously for them to define the learning outcomes. So what the desired outcomes of the competency, that's where the split screen comes in. So whatever the unit of work is, and obviously what the competency that they want to focus on. Step 3 was so it's a bit of backward mapping. Then we go back to, okay, what do we want the students to produce at the end of this unit of work, whether it's a product and it's an essay, they can understand the concepts. So we like kind of get to the what we want at the end, and what skills or behaviors we want the students to show in terms of the competency that we're actually focusing on. And then we backward map from there. We start with the designing a driving question or an enduring understanding. So what is it, like one statement that we can, for this unit of work, that we all want to work towards or start the learning process. Then we obviously embed the high impact strategies. We use the placemat. So here we use the placemat to actually design the learning that's going to happen for that particular unit of work. We consider the 4 learning design elements: pedagogical practices, the learning environments, learning partnerships, and the leveraging digital technologies. Of course, at the end, after we've worked out, after we know what the end result is, what we want them to produce in terms of the thinking, after they've done the assessments, we do collect samples of what the students have produced. We also collect the student reflections on that competency, and then we obviously go through the collaborative inquiry cycle to see what worked, what didn't work, and what could have been better. For the next time we deliver a particular unit of work. So this process, we do this for every unit of work, and we make sure that teachers go through the process. It's like a routine. We don't let them we encourage them not to skip any part of the process, just to make sure that everything's covered. What we found is teachers found it easier to program using this model. So one of the things that we found as a tool was, and if any school is in Indonesia would like to look at implementing it with a large school, is to get all the teachers on the same page. And as Lynn covered, we wanted our teachers to be designers, activators, and change makers. In the past, our classrooms looked like the teacher at the front, the teacher delivering all the content, and the students were just learners of whatever that content is. Some students got it, some students struggled, and because of that, what we needed to do is we already had our mission for the students, but we wanted to also create a mission for the teachers to give them a common goal. So it didn't matter whether you are a teacher that's been teaching for a year or a teacher that's been teaching for 20 years, we were all on the common goal to make our learning engaging for the students. We want to develop good character, strong leaders. We want them to be empathetic, similar to what Lynn covered. Young people these days, they want to make change in the world. So we needed to give them the skill set and develop the competencies in their behaviors so that they can actually achieve what they're passionate about. So what we did, every single teacher got this, it's like a bookmark, got this bookmark with their DDL mission, and they displayed it on the board, and every student knew there's going to be a change now. There's a mission for them, and there's also a mission for the teacher. So it's no longer that the teachers at the start of the class, at the front of the room delivering content, and they were the one all and be all of information. The other thing that we also designed was passports. What we found is a lot of our students didn't travel overseas, mainly just within Australia. A few did back to their home countries. And what we thought is to give them a passport is to get the students to believe that if you develop any one of these competencies, these are universal competencies wherever you go in the world, no matter what language that you speak. You know, you can be a collaborator in Indonesia, a collaborator in Taiwan, a collaborator in, the US. So it doesn't matter what country, these are all transferable. It just, the language will change. And so what we did was we did passports, and we used them as the reflection tool within the class. Just having those little things made a big difference to the students. I know it's just like a little gadget to them, but some of them have never owned passports. So they were very, very excited that this would be the first passport that they'd experienced, and it was obviously had the competencies inside. The other thing that we noticed, because a lot of our students are from non-English speaking backgrounds, and they didn't have the vocab that they needed to actually collaborate. So we created collaborative conversation bookmarks. This all goes into a toolbox. So it's like a OneDrive that all the tools are there, and teachers can access whenever they need it. They can either print it out or pull it up on a BenQ panel, and then it's interactive. So they can use it wherever they need that extra support in terms of a tool in a lesson. And the other thing you'll see is the reflection rulers. These were more designed for lower primary. And basically for lower primary, it's just a visual to say, and you'll see an example of that, of how they use that reflection ruler to say, okay, where am I if they're doing collaboration, where am I on the scale? So just to it gives you, what's great about designing for deep learning is the actual dimensions and the competencies and the dimensions. It gives you a scale so students can actually self-reflect and say, I'm here right now, and this is where I want to go. And we use that with lower primary because obviously their vocabulary isn't as well developed. So this is inside the passport. So what we do is for every single unit of work, obviously the students have a passport, and within the passport, that's the particular dimension. And the students then now, with their teachers, they read the dimension word for word, and then they actually write down in their own words what they think that means and what it looks like for them in the classroom, and how they should, like in this particular case, it's for collaboration. And then they do use the same passport where they track and reflect. And I'll show you some examples of that. We've got one example here. Okay, so this is, for example, a working interdependently as a team. It's a collaboration task. I think it was a PDHPE. So this is help seeking strategies. It was a Year 6 PDHPE lesson. And so that unit of work was designed around this, the split screen was collaboration and this particular dimension. So the students, what we do at the start of every lesson, this is inside the passport too, but it's also a tool that we can display on the screen, is that for this particular thing, we read through all the dimensions. The students write what they think in their own words, what each one looks like, or what does it look like at limited evidence, what does it look like at emerging, etc. And then as a class, they come up with they complete the Y chart, and they have to cover what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like. So when the teacher is going around, if it sounds like it's a calm environment, it should be a calm environment. No one should be arguing and talking on top of each other. And this is some of the examples of what the students put down. So everyone gives their suggestions. No one's bossing anyone around. Everyone's option is being heard. As I said before, we had a big issue with students not wanting to share, not being good collaborators. Whenever we had group tasks and group assignments, in particular for science experiments, it was difficult not to get complaints that some students didn't contribute, some students were excluded. And so when we added the competency that they have to be good collaborators, and that was part of now the teaching process and the expectation, and we'll be also self-assessing and the teacher will be giving feedback, it kind of flipped everything around, and we've had better collaborators and better results as a result of this. And then this is the last so they go through this, they come back to this dimension in the middle of the unit of work, and then towards the end, after they've produced their final product or performance task. And then they have the final self-reflection after they've had a chat with the teacher. And so this is also in the Learning Passport or the reflection booklet. And basically, if you look at this one, decisions were made by one or two teammates. So in this particular one of the things that the reflections that the student did was that they should involve, like, say the other members might have wanted to say something else. So obviously, not only did they learn about a PDHPE content, they also learned that in terms of the behaviors that I need to display is maybe instead of being just the main decision maker, listen to other people and see what else they may have wanted to share. So this is a year one deep learning mathematics unit of work. We use the bridge design to design this, and it's obviously covering geometric measure. We have the split screen approach. So similar to the other examples, in this particular one, they were measuring length. The content was for length for year one. And they were also looking at collaboration, interpersonal and team related skills. Anyone who would know, Kindy and year one kids are not easy they always like their own thing and they don't want to share. And this was one of the things that, an example of how we applied deep learning to year one. So of course, this is the outcome. The outcome was on length. So we're actually teaching content, deep content. We want to make sure that every student at the end is able to measure, record, compare, and estimate lengths and distances using uniform and informal units as well as centimeters. So we had a big task with year one, and this is part of the new mathematics syllabus. The first thing we did, this is what, like if you follow the steps that I mentioned earlier, is we got the dimension. So we know we picked collaboration as a competency in the split screen. Now we looked at the dimension. And as the teacher and the students, we read through each description on the dimension, and we highlighted what behaviors we as a class thought looked like, sounds like, and feels like collaboration. And that's what we've highlighted. Then as a group, we had to develop our class goals for this unit of work. So this is done at the start of the unit of work. And so this was our first attempt for year one students. So what's really important if you're applying deep learning in your school, know the students and how they learn and know their levels. So too much, like a long sentence for year one was too hard for them to grasp, and then it kind of gets lost in translation and it loses its purpose. So what we did was we attempted to, as a team, they attempted to, the first attempt to collaborate, we talk and listen to each other, we make plans and agree on what we want to achieve. Too wordy, we tried it again, still too wordy. We said, let's limit it to 2 words per, like to describe our class goals for this particular dimension. And in the end, we came up with kindness and help, goal following, respectful talking, and sharing and taking turns. And we used the ruler tool to actually to have the students reflect. We also made some visual codes for the students that needed that extra support. And we wanted to, as a class, the teacher really wanted to emphasize respectful talking, sharing and taking turns, reinforcing goal following and encouraging kindness and help with those year one students. And of course, then we started on the content now. So the next step was, after we decided what the outcome was, what the competency was, we used the placemat to actually start designing the unit of work and look at what which of the design tools we're going to use. So we focused on, like I said, when you're first starting, it's too much to do all of them. So this was right at the beginning. So we decided just to focus on 1 or 2 pedagogical practices and look at learning partnerships. And in the end, it kind of evolved the learning environments where you took maths outside of the classroom in the end, and you'll see that, even though that wasn't part of the original design, but the next time they teach that unit of work, they'll definitely change that. And then we also decided as a group what the driving questions. So how can we collaborate to measure length using informal and informal units and communicate our findings findings effectively. This is the teachers came up with this, the group of teachers that were programming. And then eventually when we, workshop this and break this down, this was the goal. I like working with my friends in class. When we work together, it helps us learn better. And we just kept reiterating that goal. And obviously, with the students while we're teaching the content, and we stopped if we found students weren't collaborating properly or things, the lesson was not achieving the outcomes that we wanted. We stopped, we revisited the classroom goals with collaboration. And then obviously we took some time to unpack it, remind everyone and move forward again. This is the white chart in the actual passport. Students actually they couldn't really write words, so they use the symbols of what it looks like for to show that behavior for that particular dimension. We also used a lot of scaffolding in terms of one of our pedagogical practices was to use scaffolding. So we started with, this was the first task. They had to work in a group, and first they had to measure a picture that's on a page. They also had collaboration superstars. So if they showed any of those class goals, the teacher would go around and put down some stars to encourage the students to show the collaborative behaviors that we were looking at. It moved the second worksheet or scaffold was it moved from a picture, to a real leaf. So this was, we actually went outside and got some leaves and stuck them down. They did the task again, because what we did was we did the I do, you do, we do approach. In terms of explicit teaching, that was one of the pedagogical practices that we wanted to obviously use in this particular unit of work. So then students, of course, up the top, you'll notice the teacher now, she's got the visual codes and the wording, and then we're putting stars when that group was actually displaying, goal following or taking turns, etc. And then we took the learning outside. So when I said that it went from, learning partners. So we did group work. We grouped the students based on high ability, low ability. That was one of the learning partnership strategy that we used. And then with learning environments, the unit of work, it was so exciting. The teacher was very happy with the work of the students. The students were highly engaged. And then so we took the learning, we decided to add learning environments, and we took it outside, and we added an extra task, almost an enrichment task. In small groups, they had to go outside and measure the different lengths of objects compared in real life objects in the playground. And we gave them a 30-centimeter ruler, and we gave them objects that were obviously longer than 30 centimeters. And it was just amazing to see them apply the competency to their learning and the big aha moments with the students. And this is a class size of 30 students with mixed ability. They had to record, this was one of the outcomes, they had to record their findings in terms of the objects and how long how many ruler lengths, etc. And then in the end, obviously they used this particular tool to reflect on what they thought their strength was. And, it was quite interesting because students are children are very honest, and the assessment of themselves was very accurate. What the teachers found is that the students were more engaged. They got the concept faster. We had students that were more higher ability helping to teach the students that were more lower ability. So the learning partnerships, they worked really well in this particular unit of work. And so we've noticed that the results and the engagement in the classroom was a minimum 40% better compared to just the traditional how we used to do it, where they just teach from the textbook and they have a worksheet and the learning just happens in the classroom delivered by the teacher. So these are our students, super proud, lots of smiles. They were so happy with their achievement. They did well. How am I going for time?
I was just going to check, Jumana, if there was a question from the floor, just to give you a bit of a break for a second,
Yeah.
because what your examples are absolutely amazing. We can see there's some bigger questions. I can see from Suwasi, there's about the design, the time taken for the 6 C's, and another one around the greatest challenges of implementing deep learning. And Suwasi, we will hold those for the end because they're big questions to be discussed. Is there a question from an educator, a teacher, or somebody in a school? We could take at the moment to give Jumana a quick break.
Bapak Ibu, ada yang ingin bertanya, persilahkan. Sebelum kita lanjutkan kembali. So you
If
can
there
raise
isn't,
your
we'll
hand. Yeah.
if there
Okay,
isn't,
so
we
we'll
can
keep going.
tonight.
Yes,
Yes,
I think we
yes.
keep
Thank
going.
you. Yes,
Okay,
thank you,
awesome.
Will.
So that was our year 1 unit of work. Our year 1 students are almost like kindergarten because they come in early, so before they turn 5. So they're kindergarten to year 1. So that was a year 1 unit of work. I'm going to skip now to the second example, which is a year 8 deep learning history unit of work. So obviously now these are students that have been with us for a while, and now they're in high school. And I've used the PowerPoint directly from the teacher that did it. So basically, with the, the bridge template. So if we go back and remind you guys of the bridge template, the first one is know your students and how they learn and look at their interests. So what do I want my students to achieve? How do I want them to feel? What am I going to empower? How am I going to empower their agency? So what we want to do is, as Lynn mentioned, we want to move from a teacher-led classroom to a co-design student agency and voice. So there's a student voice and student agency in the classroom. So this particular unit of work, like I said, in the past, it was always teacher-led, and we wanted to shift it so from student-led to teacher-framed, and then obviously, so the teacher acts as a facilitator in the classroom, not the main person with only the information that for the students to consider. So one of the, like I said, the split screen, we have the outcomes. This is a year 8 history unit of work, and the competency that this particular teacher spoke about was collaboration. Again, this was when we first started, like maybe 3 years into the work. We had a big, we identified as a school that collaboration among teachers and among students was not as well refined as it should be. Teachers didn't want to share their work. Students didn't want to do group work. They all wanted to get high marks. It was very competitive. And so as a school, we decided that for that particular year, collaboration was going to be the focus because it would not only benefit the students, but it was also going to benefit the teachers. And now, 6 years on, we have, groups of teachers designing as a team, big shifts in the culture of the school. They're sharing resources. The students are happy to do group work. And now they're all like, and as a result, it's gone into co-curricular activities, and I'll show you that in a sec. So again, this teacher looked at the 4 elements of learning design. And this way, I'm not going to use the placemat. I'm going to show you how when you start with the tools, and then the teachers, once they grasp it and they're comfortable, they'll start to actually use the tools differently that suits them and their class. So in this particular one, she just used the actual image and decided that, you know what, I don't want to use the placemat, even though it is the placemat indirectly. And this is what she was going to do for her year 8 history class. And this is like a group of history teachers planning together for about 40 minutes of brainstorming. And then they all go off and obviously update the program accordingly. So for pedagogical practices, she wanted to focus on explicit prompts, and she wanted to focus on scaffolded worksheets. For leveraging digital, she wanted visual stimulus. For learning partnerships, she wanted to randomize the partnerships, the groups. She did not want to actually organize it themselves. They had to keep changing groups so they can learn from different people. And in her learning environment, she decided to change her classroom setup to a scavenger hunt. So it wasn't just a normal classroom and so you can change the learning environment within their own classroom. So this is what she asked the students to do. Her lesson overview was they had to, for that particular dimension, it's the same team related to interpersonal skills, they had to identify themselves on the progression. So like I said, one of the practices that we do is at the start of the unit of work, it's in the program template. They have to read through all the dimension and identify where they sit. In pairs, they had to move around the classroom to analyze sources, and they had a seated discussion at the end to make a group decision, because that was one of their class goals, make a group decision. At the start, this is the dimension that for this particular unit of work, what she did was she, you know how the students identify where they are? 55% of them were in emerging in terms of collaboration, and 35% were at developing. So you can see that the culture at the school and in the classrooms with students is they didn't really have the skills or the language for collaboration, or the skills to actually improve or develop them further and then reflect. So we used the dimension in the passport as a reflection tool, and you'll see how they fill that out very soon. Again, with our students, we break down the language. So as a teacher, for that particular dimension, after they've read the wording and what is expected to at least be at developing stage, so they brainstorm this as a class. So the teacher co-construct this. Teacher says, what does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? And this as a class, they came up with these particular descriptions. So when the teachers were walking around and, you know, she wants to see if the students are working interdependently as a team, you know, when they're talking, there's eye contact, there's hand gestures, there's modeling, you know, good positive behavior, body language, so that, you know, it looks like that they're engaged and, you know, it looks like the students are actually collaborating. It's not like it's real, basically. It's what really happens in the real workforce. This is a particular example. They cut out the dimension, and this particular student, they dated on the 5th of February. She was here. She had to show evidence why she thought she was there. So here she says, I'm here because when I work in a group, I do more than others in my group, and we don't do the equal amount. This is huge, because when they go to university, you know, this is something that they have to learn. So in this particular case, this young lady was a bit resentful. It's always, you know, I do all the work. And so these are one of the students that don't want to do the work, that don't want to work in a group anymore. But that's not how, obviously, the real world works. And in this particular unit of work, we wanted to focus on developing that particular skill. And then she also set a goal for herself. So she's going to go from emerging to developing, and she's going to say that I'm going to make sure that everyone is contributing equally. So she's going to take leadership in making sure that the roles are divided equally in this particular task for the performance task at the end. In terms of pedagogical practices, the teacher wanted to focus on explicit prompts. So she had the, you know, the learning intention. If you notice the split screen in the language, is to determine the nature and purpose of sources by making a group decision, which is the collaboration. And then we had the success criteria. And then there's also the decision, which is linked to collaboration for this particular task. And, you know, just as teachers, like, it doesn't have to always be like all typed and printed. In this particular, you know, with this particular classroom, she decided to write everything on the board with the students, obviously co-constructing. Again, we have a lot of non-English speaking background students. So what we did was to give them the right language. We did sentence starters similar to those prompts for those year 4s where they use the sentence stems, the bookmark. She decided this is what I want to hear. So what collaboration looks like when I'm walking around hearing you guys discuss you know, the content and making decisions as a group. I want to hear, if you're disagreeing, what it sounds like. If you're agreeing, what it sounds like. If you want to add on an idea, this is what it sounds like. These are some of the scaffolded worksheets that she did for that particular class. Like I said, one of the teaching standards is know the students and how they learn. And one of the strategies that we found that works well with this class is to make sure that we have scaffolds and give them some prompt questions. The randomized partnerships was because our students always like to work with their friends, and we wanted to make sure that they get exposed to more than one group. So they had to, like, as they were going from one source to the other, they had to change who their partner was. And the idea is that you can learn from other people. They don't have to be your friends, because we've got a lot of our students just like to work with their friends. She set up the classroom so they're out of their seats. In the past, they used to just sit down and obviously, like, you know, share a worksheet or whatever it was, the stimulus with the partner next to them. What she did was she decided to get them out of their seats. That was one of her learning environments, and she put posters up around the wall, and the students had to get out of their seats and walk around and have those discussions using those sentence starters. And as a result, this is just one of the quotes, you know, this is the year 8 girls. Can we have more lessons like this? This was my favorite lesson of the year. The engagement was has improved dramatically. Normally in history class, the students, like before deep learning, they'll just be sitting, there'll be a textbook, there'll be some worksheets, there's teacher at the front. It really flipped the whole culture in the classroom, the engagement, even the learning outcomes. A lot of students were discussing the sources and what they thought they were and the different answers that came through. So it was definitely a high impact teaching moment for that teacher. Again, like I said, we have the tools, so the teachers have the flexibility to make adjustments in the classroom, whether they want to write it on the board or if they want to use the actual passport. This particular teacher decided to use the passport just at 3, or it's actually the passport is that competency. So they visited the competency 3 times at the beginning for a pre-assessment, in the middle just to track how they're going, and like say to see how they're going with their goals. Like one of the girls who said that I want to make sure everyone contributes equally, how she was going with that, and there's a bit of like peer coaching and the teacher coaching him, and then at the end for the final reflection. So this is an example. The orange is where they started and the green is where she felt she was towards the end. They've got to show evidence of it. So if you look at this particular one, so I find myself in a limited evidence level. This is due to my exposure of information and news. However, I'm beginning to read between the like the stereotypes. So they actually reflect not only on the content and how they understand it, but also on the competency and the behavior that they displayed. So that's for the 2 examples within the classroom. We've taken it outside of the classroom and we've taken it into faith-based, obviously Islamic studies at the school. I can go through that if you want, or if you'd like me to pause, I'm happy to pause or answer questions.
Ibu Yuli, what would you like to happen?
Yeah, I
I'm fine
think
to
give
keep going.
opportunity for asking question. Yeah, I will, if you give the permission later on, I also can share the screen as the PowerPoint for everyone.
Of course, yeah, that's fine.
Yes, thank you.
So do
Okay,
you want me
Bapak
to keep
Ibu,
going?
how many slides, Zumana?
This
Yep.
is the last example.
Okay.
These are the last
Yeah.
examples.
Just finish it up first for the last
Okay.
one. Thank you.
So one of the things that we found as a school is that we were able to extend learning in the classroom. So, obviously the split screen, the content, and then obviously the competency at the same time. We were able to extend this learning to outside of the classroom through co-curricular activities. And this is where we started to see the transfer in knowledge and understanding and the skill set and the behaviors in the student and the changed mindset because of the transfer. So I'm just going to give you a few quick examples. I won't take too long. One of the things is what we're doing now is a big focus on STEM. So we have an iSTEM class in Year 9 and 10, and they focus on, they design deep learning, that team designs deep learning activities that focus on, STEM problem solving, real world problems with creativity. And that's one of the examples that we're actually using it now as an additional in outside of like the traditional subjects. We're doing it in STEM. We're also doing it in Islamic studies. So with Islamic studies, we're focusing on character because what we believe is the first dimension, resilience, patience, and perseverance. We found that our students had post-COVID a lot of mental health issues, and they were coming to school and just before exams or when, life hits you with some problems, they were not coping as well as we, would like them to. So we're also focusing on character for Islamic studies, creativity for STEM. And I'll give you an example, and collaboration, of course, has always been a focus at the school. This is our STEM showcase that we just recently went to. So this is our students, the 3D printers, solving real world problems to do with the environment, working with local, extending learning partnerships, working with local councils and the Western Sydney University to showcase their solutions to localized problems. And and so that's one of the ways that we've deepened the learning by taking learning from outside and seeking expertise from outside. And the learning partnerships has expanded across the school. As a result, the students feel so much more confident. They're able to speak more openly and contribute to the community, the local community in particular. Another example is the Year 12 graduation, the Year 6 and the Year 12 graduation. What we've done is in the past, our Year 6 and our Year 12 graduation were run by teachers. Teachers were exhausted. They didn't really have time to, organize all the event management associated with a Year 6 or Year 12 graduation. And so we decided to use that as a teaching tool for the whole, like as a unit of work or an extracurricular within school time. And we basically every Year 6 student now from the start of Year 6, it goes through a process where the teachers, the Year 6 team They design what learning experiences throughout is going to happen, whether it's in maths, financial literacy, and then they're going to look at money and spending money and budgets and that. And then they use the Year 6 graduation as an example of a budget that needs to be obviously looked into. So the students are very, very involved. They got a lot of student voice. They can decide, you know, what's going to happen with Year 6 graduation, the learning environments. Are they doing it in the classroom, outside the classroom, where the learning happens? So it's just transformed the way we do even Year 6 graduation. And our teachers have really said that, you know, just transferring that from within the curriculum and then using the Year 6 graduation as the end of year finale for collaboration has made a huge impact on the students. And if you look at, we also do the Eid Fates. If you look at this particular one, they were looking at working interdependently as a team. They do the same process. Remember that bridge, the same process where the bridge design, where you actually read the dimension, unpack the language, work out what's important, what the goals are for that particular task. In this case, like one of the biggest issues that came up with that was that the jobs weren't shared fairly. And you can tell by the face painters, because this is like, we do this for the Eid Fete and the post, you know, the post event for the Year 6 graduation. They design their own like fun fair at the end. And we can tell that the face painters, the temping bowlers and the archery didn't share the jobs fairly. And some of the reflections are really good with the Year 6s. So in terms of like a student learner profile at the end of when they graduate Year 6, students will be able to reflect on their skill set with regards to collaboration and where they need to improve and how far. Again, everything that we do is embedded in pedagogical practices and content. Again, here in the Year 6 graduation, they look at the 6 thinking hats because they're actually designing an event that we'll have to factor in an audience, we'll have to factor in, you know, risk management, planning, you know, where do we put the prams for the babies that come and the parents. So there's a whole process. So this is another tool that we have in the toolbox for collaboration if they had to use the 6 thinking hats to collaborate and plan an event. And obviously, like, it was a real big challenge for them to actually think from, okay, we're just going to get some, you know, some food and invite everyone to the event. This is the tool in action. This is the grass task. So once they got into the group, they do the wide chart as a group. What does it look like, feel like, and sound like for us to collaborate? And then they complete every group that's obviously running a session for that particular graduation. We'll have a role. We'll have say jobs will be shared you know, fairly, and everyone will have a job to do. And hopefully, like, everyone will work together to achieve that goal. Obviously, it doesn't always work like that because when they reflect, they realize some people go backwards in the dimension. They realize that their collaborative behaviors weren't as where they thought it would be, or the feedback they got from you know, their colleagues or you know, their teammates wasn't as good. So these are just some reflections from the students. So that obviously this is inside the passport. They note where they are. And then at the end of the actual task, they actually reflect and show evidence of where they think they've moved. In some cases, some have moved backwards and they actually acknowledge that. It's interesting how honest children can be when it comes to self-reflection. This particular one down here, I'm going down, he thought he was accelerating and then realized after that big Year 6 graduation task and the goals that were supposed to be achieved in terms of the competency weren't achieved. So he shifted himself a bit backwards. So we went from, if you look here in 2019, when we first started deep learning, the teachers were running everything. They were the MCs, they were the organizers. It was done for, you know, teachers, from a teacher's point of view. When the students start running their own graduations, it shifted from teacher-led to student-led, and even the vibe and the culture at the school, the engagement, the happiness at the school shifted remarkably. And just down at the bottom, you'll see that the Year 6 gifted, these are the gifts that they started giving the school. In the past, it used to be like, you know, some chocolates or something. Now they designed it. These are the fingerprints of 60 of the Year 6 students saying, thank you for helping us grow. So the students are now appreciating that these learning opportunities are giving them an opportunity to grow. And at one point, the following year, they said, you know, you always give us medals on when we achieve something. So they put together 20 cents each and they bought a medal for the school. So these little small acts have shifted from being materialistic to actually thinking, you know what, we actually appreciate what the school's doing with deep learning. we went from a letter that the teachers used to send. So one of the things, if you notice in Lynn's video, how it went from everyone doing a car to, you know, a flying machine and the creativity in that. We went from everyone being given a letter, hey, come to the graduation, to the students designing individual invites and going around and learning how to communicate and invite people and the protocols that are associated with an invite. So it's been such a world learning experience for them, and it's been happening for the last 5 years now, where teachers are saying we can't go back to us doing it. The students have to do it as part of a deep learning co-curricular activity. The last thing I'll share with you is, and I've shared this before, we're a Muslim school, so we have obviously Islamic studies. We've decided to link all the Quranic threads to the deep learning competencies and where they show up in the stories and the teachings of Islamic studies. This is another example. So even the Islamic studies teachers, what they do is they look at the deep learning framework placemat. They consider, like in the past, the way Islamic studies was delivered was more lecture style, a bit like a Friday khutbah in every class. It's moved now to be more student-led. We're looking at the way we, deliver the content. Like one of them would be like, having a court case and introducing legal studies in terms of like a decision that was made and based on the story of Yusuf. So you can see how now the learning and the engagement has shifted, and we're finding there's better impact for the students in terms of them engaging with the content, because the content's important too. This is just another sample from one of our Islamic studies textbooks. We have obviously the pedagogical practices, lesson intention, success criteria. It was never like that in the past. And we have, we focus on character in all this, from kindergarten to year 12. All the focus is on the character dimension in terms of Islamic studies. And we look at, we do the Y chart. Students actually brainstorm what it looks like to have grit, tenacity, perseverance, and resilience. This was post-COVID when we noticed a lot of the students were a bit stressed and mental health started to pop up, and resilience wasn't where we wanted it to be. Students reflect on where they think they're at the start of the year with Islamic studies. This is a year-long textbook, and so then they visit every lesson in terms of that particular dimension for character, and we found just the connection with the teachers and the students reflecting on sabr has made a big difference with our. It's literally eliminated the effects of COVID, post-COVID, with mental health with our students. This would never have happened if we didn't do a lot of professional learning with our teachers. So if you are going to do deep learning, you have to make time for the teachers to meet, to brainstorm, to fail forward, to think out loud, to try and take risks. And there's no errors. We just told them, just do your best. And if you know that something doesn't work, let us know so we don't, waste time and do it again and again. So that's a lot of the feedback. Like I said, we did the DDO mission for the teachers, and they have a goal. So it's not just like they're teachers to teach students to achieve the students' mission. We also want to build capacity with our teachers. Thank you very much. That was a sneak peek. So I want to say terima kasih. I'm trying to learn my Indonesian. So thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. I did want to give you a sneak peek. One thing that would happen after, your teachers actually develop confidence in deep learning and start to enjoy it. This is a sneak peek. We're looking at an Al-Nuri thinking toolbox, and all those tools that we mentioned previously, they go into a OneDrive. Teachers can access them from the classrooms. And with this particular one of the challenges we're facing at the moment is AI. So this is the Al-Nuri thinking toolbox with critical thinking, and how one of the verses that we have in Islamic teachings is to verify. So this is about verifying information and misinformation and cross-checking the sources, etc. And the goal of this one is this will be in the toolbox. The teacher can put it up in the classroom. It's also taught in Islamic studies, so there's like transfer, so the students can connect better. And basically, whenever they're dealing with, a large source of information, the bias and all that, that's just another tool, but it hasn't been launched yet. We're still workshopping it as a staff. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to ask. And thank you for your patience. It was a bit long.
No, thank you, Jemana. It was such a comprehensive example of your growth over the last 5 years. Absolutely amazing what your school has achieved. And what it is for everybody is that modelling of when there is a national and state architecture and you have great leadership within a school that's able to take that teaching and learning understanding into a context that's going to work for a school, you can see the beauty of what's happened in this school. So once again, Jemana, thank you so very, very much for what an amazing example. And I know everybody's just a little bit exhausted about thinking about all the opportunities involved. I can see that that we do have a little bit of time for questions. I can also see that Ibu Lin popped a couple of reflective questions into the chat. So Lynn, do you just want to tell us what they are whilst we get together some questions to ask Jemana or Lynn or myself?
Thank you, Jenny. I was just wondering, what are the ideas or possibilities that excite you? What are your wonderings? What is it making you think about? And why is this kind of learning important?
So there's some great prompts for you to be starting to reflect on and to take back to your school, or you may have a school group there listening to this presentation. Those reflective questions we can come to, but is there a specific question for Jemana that we should see? Lynn, just to let you know, we're traveling now.
May I ask a question to the last presenter?
Yes, Suwasi, to Jemana, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. All of the presenters are really inspiring, and we are still too far away from that, but we are learning. My question is related to the strategy. In fact, I have put my question in the chat box here. What is the strategy to ensure that all the 6 C's are equally developed over time towards the graduate profile? Is there any subject expected? Is every subject expected to develop all the 6 C's, or may give more attention to certain C's? I mean, certain C's competencies, according to subject-specific competencies.
Yeah. So as a school, the strategy that we used was we met as a staff and we decided that knowing our students and collaboration and communication were the 2 competencies that we found we needed to start with, because if you can't collaborate and you can't communicate, then the critical thinking and all that was a bit impacted. So from kindergarten to year 4, that's why you saw those year 4 samples, we decided the focus was only collaboration. And then that obviously continued into year 5, 6, 7, and 8. When they got to year 5 and 6, so we divided the competencies into year groups and what was relevant. So critical thinking and creativity, we made that as a focus more like in terms of the programming and the planning in year 9, 10, 11, and 12. Character is something that we embedded in Islamic studies and in wellbeing and PTHPE classes from kindergarten to year 12. So by the end, we covered all the competencies. Citizenship, we covered it in our extracurricular activities with, the charities that we sponsor through STEM, the STEM projects that we do in terms of solving real world problems and empathy and stuff like that. So we just divided it because if it is a lot to do all at once, and the biggest thing we thought is go slow to go fast. So by the end of year 12, they would have been exposed to every single competency, but not necessarily every year group would be doing that until they've developed one.
All right. So you you consider that some competencies and a sort of prerequisite to other competencies, right? And the peak is after year 12. Is all of the competencies have been developed over the years and horizontally aligned and also sequentially aligned, right?
Yes. So basically, by the time they got to year 12, because the language of the competency, so we do visit it again, but the language of the dimension, for us to break it down for like primary school, like say Kindy year 1 and year 2, we had to start simple. So they do collaboration in Kindy year 1, year 2, as you saw in the example. They wouldn't be doing critical thinking and stuff like that because they're not as developed as we would hope them to be, obviously, at that age. They're still young. But then as we found that once there were good collaborators and then we focused on communication, usually in year 5 and 6, there's a lot of communication tasks. And then once they've mastered those two, they got the hang of it. And then there's a big focus in year 7 to year 12 on the rest, which is the global citizenship, through STEM, through the subjects.
And can I have one more question, Jenny?
Sure.
If it's a different question, we might just see if Lynn wanted. Is there anything for you to add to that question? And then Suasi can ask the next one. And Sandy, I can see your hand up. Yeah.
Different schools do different things, Suasi. So the unfortunate complexity about this work is that it's exciting and it's energizing, but there isn't a recipe that all schools follow because schools have to apply it to their context and the capacity and the confidence of their teachers to grow them over time. Some schools look at their scope and sequence across subjects and work out what's the best fit for a different subject. But not all teachers at all times are focusing on competencies in the beginning because they need some space to make it make sense. It doesn't all happen at once. And they also need opportunities for young people to revisit, as Jemana said, even if collaboration is done in grade 2, you don't lose collaboration. You keep building. So they're like building blocks to make the whole child.
Oh, that's interesting. My next question is, how do you determine the essential knowledge of every subject? Are there any books chosen collectively as reference for teachers? And how do you ensure the horizontal and vertical or sequential alignment in terms of content?
There's no standard reference. Australia.
Are you talking about the NESA curriculum?
Yeah, kind of.
More broader, in strategies.
Teachers usually are searching for, a kind of recognized reference or something like that.
Yeah, we don't have as many textbooks necessarily across schools in Australia. So teachers need to be the designers of the learning. So they need to know the curriculum. They need to know the curriculum framework.
But we do have a thorough curriculum that is sequential and people can follow. Then that is different to what they have in Indonesia.
They have a curriculum, but the curriculum doesn't. It outlines the what to teach.
Okay.
It gives some guidance on the how to teach, but we have other resources for that.
So that requires a high level of PPEX.
Yes.
In students, right? In teachers.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, that's a big challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Suasi. Sandy.
Baik, silakan
Okay.
Pandi.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. And my first question is for Jenny. It was quite interesting when you showed us the slide where you saw, in that slide, I can see the solo taxonomy is thick in the classroom. So my question is, does it mean that teachers and students understand about that solo taxonomy? And who stick that one? Is it the teachers or students? Because in here, I believe that that kind of framework only teachers knows about it because it's quite tricky and maybe difficult for students to understand. That one is the first question regarding the solo taxonomy framework that you put in the classroom. Who made it? Is it the teacher or the student? And are the teachers understand about it as well? And maybe my second question is for Jomana. Thank you so much for your explanation. I noticed in your slide when you showed us some kind of collaboration, if I'm not mistaken, and then there is a chart over there. My question is, do you teach that 6 Cs explicitly in the classroom, or just some kind of activities that promote that 6 Cs? So that's my question, whether do you teach that 6 Cs explicitly or implicitly in the classroom? I think that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy. I'll take the first question and then hand straight to Jemana. In the schools that we visited, it is, first of all, a strong professional development exercise to ensure everybody across the school understood the Solo taxonomy. We saw that across South Australian schools because it was one of the taxonomies that that state is finding is very helpful for teacher planning, and Lynn would also add to this in a moment. So in that school, it was strong professional development with the teachers so that the teachers could co-construct it with the students. The students had a shared language of Solo in their classrooms, but as we do in every part of the quality teaching framework, it's really important for the teachers to actually know and understand and be able to do, and then to work that through with the students. Lynn, would you like to talk about the Solo framework for a sec?
Cannot hear.
Sorry,
Just
Lynn, yep, mute.
gave our teachers a scaffold to support them to understand how to move from just planning a surface lesson to grow it to have more depth. So it was an absolute amazing tool that our teachers gravitated to, and it helped them understand how to deepen learning. It gave them explicit language and strategies to do that. The other thing is, in choosing the tool, any of those tools like Solo, it was important that they added value but didn't overwhelm teachers. So they needed to be introduced in a timely manner so that teachers didn't just throw their hands in the air and go, this is just too much, and it was too hard. And the focus needed to be on the work of teachers is about designing learning. They are the architects. So they had to learn this work and build their capacity and get support to be the best learning designers. And so they had to learn on the job. It wasn't something you could fill them up and then they go and do it. They actually had to apply their learning, test it, take risks, and then review how it went.
Thanks, Lynn. And Jemana, your question?
Yeah, with regards to explicitly teaching the competency, so yes, at the start of the, say, for example, if we're doing a unit of work for maths, at the start of that unit of work, before the teacher starts the content or introducing the unit of work, they will select a dimension from that competency. In that case, it was interpersonal and team-related skills. They would explicitly go through word by word the dimension, break down the language, and then the Y chart will actually focus on the behaviors for that dimension, what the teacher's looking for, what the teacher should be able to see, hear, and like what it should look like, see, feel like, and what it should feel like in the classroom. So that's very explicitly done at the beginning of that unit of work. Then, of course, they focus on the content for that particular unit of work, because deep understanding is also crucial. That's one of the to meet the outcomes of that unit of work. Then when they're doing different activities, so maybe 3 or 4 times when they were designing that unit of work, they would have like a task where the students would have to apply the knowledge that they've learned from that unit of work to test the outcome, whether they understand what they're doing. At that particular point, say, for example, they're working together to measure, say, playground equipment outside. The teacher will again revisit that particular dimension for that competency, remind the students of what the behaviors that they're looking for, what it should look like, feel like, and sound like, and then give feedback there. So it's done about 3-4 times throughout the whole unit of work, and with the final end being the reflection, the self-assessment from students. We also do peer assessment. So students will give each other feedback whether they all had a fair go, everyone was part of the group decision that was made, etc. So it is taught explicitly, it's like a split screen, so it's revisited about 3-4 times in that unit of work.
Thank you, Jumana. Ibu Yuli, I think we've presented a lot of information today,
Yeah.
and maybe it's maybe it has raised more questions than answers, and we are quite happy to take more questions. But we also, if people would like to see, can talk with their
What's wrong?
and staffs and
Your
and
connection
in collaboration within their
Connection is
districts. And if there was a follow and do a deeper focus on things that this okay? Is this okay?
Yeah,
it's
it's
okay.
already.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, sorry. We'd be happy to do a follow-up focus questions
Yeah.
on the things that have really landed
connection.
and need a bigger discussion. So we'll hand it back to you, Ibu. Yuli, we'll hand it back to you now.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Jenny
Say
seems
connection.
Yeah,
Connection is
maybe
yeah.
unstable connection, maybe.
She might have
Yeah.
dropped out.
Yes,
I think one more question is also raised.
are you right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Iya, baik. Bapak Ibu ada yang ingin bertanya, silahkan.
One more question,
Yes.
Jenny, Lynn, and Jumana is regarding on the book of Michael Fullan's mention about collaborative inquiry. So could you please probably, because we haven't heard about in the probably district levels of the government, or we don't know yet about the collaborative inquiry itself, how it's happened, and probably implementing in the different states.
Yeah. So,
Jumana, do you want to
Ibu Lynn, because this comes to, it's a district facilitation as well, Lynn. So we might go from Lynn to Jumana, or Lynn, would it be helpful to go the other way?
I think Jumana first.
Okay,
Yeah.
so with the collaborative,
Jumana.
no problem. With the collaborative inquiry cycle, if you saw in our planning template, the learning design planning template for our program, right at the end, we have a reflection. So after we've implemented it, we reflect on the teaching and learning that actually happened. So what usually happens at the end of that unit of work, the team of teachers that were teaching that particular unit of work, like say, for example, maths, I had about 6 teachers teaching it. They all come together for about half an hour and they reflect on what worked well, what didn't work very well, what they could change, how they can actually, look at the 4 different learning design elements and what they could have added. Like, for example, in the first year, we only focused on those 2 pedagogical practices and learning partnerships at the time with the groups. The following year, after they did the collaborative inquiry cycle and they went like the full circle and they assessed how they went, what worked, what didn't work, they added the learning environments where they took a maths lesson outside into the real playground and used bigger objects. So it's done at the end of every unit of work. Sometimes it's done like in person as a group because we happen to have the time at school. Other times it's done through MS Teams. So we leverage digital technology where everyone through a Teams chat puts in their ideas and then one person then is tasked with updating that unit of work to deepen it for the following year. Like we've been 6 years doing this, and now I can confidently say even our maths units of work have really deepened. Like we're focusing on critical thinking for high school. I've noticed a big difference in the quality based on that collaborative inquiry cycle and the teachers meeting together to participate in this.
And can I just add to that? If you think about it's an improvement cycle. It's a cycle to reflect and improve. So the cycle starts, it can be used, as Jumana said, to review a unit of work and to help design a unit of work, but can also be used at a school level to think about how the work is going, or at a system or regional district to think about it. So the words that we use are, you assess, look at where things are at, then you design to match your context, whether it's designing learning for students or designing a professional learning program for teachers. Then you implement, and then you measure, reflect, and change. And then the cycle starts again. So it's lots of our jurisdictions across Australia have a school improvement model which uses a similar framework: assess, design, implement, measure, reflect, change. But they might use slightly different words. And I'm sure in your context, you have an improvement cycle. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you very
Thank you, Lynn.
much.
Yuli?
Okay, thank you very much. Any addition? No? Okay, thank you very much for the speaker, Mrs. Louise, Mrs. Davy, and Mrs. Dinawi, and also all participants as well. So for participants, as a reminder, please complete the attendance list. Before we end this seminar, let's take a group photo to commemorate this seminar. Yeah. Pak Ibu, please turn on your camera. I will take the photo of the first slide. Okay, wait. 1, 2, 3. Okay, next slide. Wait. 1, 2, 3. Okay, next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Ibu.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Where is the attendance list? The attendance
Yeah,
form?
it's on the chat box.
The
It's
chat
on the
box.
chat box. Yeah.
Just a moment.
So,
I haven't found.
as the summary of this seminar, I will conclude that this seminar share an overview of deep learning framework and its context in Australia, especially about teachers as architects of learning, use thoughtful strategies, assessment, and competencies to make students' deep learning growth visible and guide them from surface to deep to transfer understanding. So when curriculum, learning frameworks, competencies, and teachers' roles aligns, students can build strong academic skills and global competencies through clear, practical, and powerful learning designs. So by focusing on what truly matters about the competencies such as character, citizenship, collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking, so the teachers help learners to stay engaged, apply their learning, and thrive without feeling overwhelmed. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for your information.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Ibu.
for, thank you.
Have a
Oh yeah,
wonderful
for your
weekend.
information.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you so much,
thank
Lydia.
you.
Thank you so much, Jenny, Lynn, Jumana, Prof. Suwarsip, Prof. Agung Medira, dan semua ya.
Belum ketemu presentasinya, Mbak.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, thank you so much. So I just end the meeting.
Well, thank you. Thank you too. I'm trying to find the attendance list.
Okay, I will share again, Ibu.
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
Okay.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Wait. Okay, here it is.
All right. That's good.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ibu. Yeah, thank you, everyone. So thank you very much for your time and contributions. And since it is continuing series, so please stay connected with us in the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lydia. Just my connection has a problem, so I cannot end the meeting. So everyone, please leave the meeting. I think I just started open up the Zoom. Thank you so much, Jenny, Lynn, Jumana. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ms.
Thank
Dinawi.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
See you. Thank you, Prof. Suwarsi.
Yeah, thank you too.
Yeah.
I'm filling in the attendance list. Okay.
Terima kasih,
Done.
Mbak. Assalamualaikum.
Sama-sama, Ibu. Waalaikumsalam.
Bye-bye, Mbak Diana.
Ya, Ibu.
Turn right on Bernard Hagon.